Ladies and gentlemen, humble greetings to you all, respected panelists, dignitaries and moderator, intellectuals, theorists, thinkers who are all here today. Me, as the president of the Bengal Club, pleased to welcome you all to the Bengal Club National Debate on Trial Media, Is This a Curse to Our Democracy? I first start by acknowledging my confrere in the General Committee, Dr. Shondik Chatterjee, for curating a motion like this that raises a question which possibly is in the mind of all. As we wake up in the morning, whether we put our eyes on the newspaper or on the mobile, we keep on getting all the news from the West, Dalit protagonists, to the activists in the South, to from in North India politics, to an East India side, any murder. We form our judgment, we form our opinions. We don't wait for the court to pass any judgment. And much before the court comes to a verdict, we already have formed our opinion in my own court, in the court in my mind, whether the guy is to be guillotined, hanged, or to be freed. But this topic on the press freedom, how much press rightly or wrongly influences readers or gets into the province of law, is not a topic of just today. It has been there perennially for long, and hardly any intellectual or political big names have refrained from making a quote on this subject. I mean, interestingly, Mark Twain said, "It seems to me that just in the ratio of the newspapers increase, our morals also decrease." Whereas a strong advocate of the free press, Thomas Carlyle, George Bernard Shaw, Thomas Carlyle made a quote that he felt that the four pillars of the democracy, press is one, in addition to the executive, judiciary, and the legislative. Now, how much this one pillar will be intersecting with the other pillar, which is the legislation, is something I'm sure the panelists and the debaters will be debating today. Thomas Jefferson interestingly commented, "Were it left on me to decide whether we should have a government without a newspaper or a newspaper without a government, I should not hesitate for a moment to choose the latter." But I think late 2020, early 2021 in India, this motion got a renewed life and relevance, and therefore this motion today may address many of the questions that confront us, that make us puzzled or set us thinking. Our own Press Act of 1867 augmented, changed multiple times, addendums to it, numerous examples of trial by media in India, from historical Wahhabi conspiracy to the Rana Ayub case, which even prompted New York Times to write big articles on the Indian press freedom, may possibly be all in the points of an interesting discussion later in the evening, helping us to draw some sensible, informed inferences of our own at the end. We may go home thinking, is sunlight truly the best disinfectant, and electricity the efficient policeman, as Justice Louis Bernards would have said if he was here? I now welcome Dr. Professor Rudrangshu Mukherjee as moderator to the debate. Dr. Mukherjee, whose academic career that started in our Calcutta Boys School here, ended in Oxford, journeyed in between through presidency and Jail Nehru University, is full of achievements and accolades. A professor of Calcutta University, University of Manchester, University of California, first vice chancellor in Ashoka, incumbent chancellor there, is also an author and editor of numerous books on history and trade and politics. I am delighted that an academician of his stature agreed to moderate the show today. I welcome Dr. Mukherjee. Along with this, I also welcome Ms. Nandini Khaitan to be on the stage to keep the time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and enjoy the evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambarish. It was my honor to moderate the first panel discussion that Bengal Club had, and it is again my honor to moderate the first debate Bengal Club is having, and I hope this becomes a part of the growing tradition of Bengal Club, and that we will have a debate every year. It's my pleasant duty now to introduce the speakers on both sides, and as I call and introduce you, I'll be very grateful if you come and take your assigned seat. Snehasish worked for Doordarshan News in Calcutta. He is one of the well-known and veteran media persons. He did his master's in journalism from Calcutta University, a PhD diploma in media laws from NALSAR, Hyderabad. He's currently the president of the Press Club, Kolkata. Welcome, Snehasish. Sabyasachi Chaudhury, one of the most acclaimed lawyers of Calcutta, is an advocate primarily in the original side on the Calcutta High Court. He is a known figure also in the world of public speaking, and I'm sure we are all looking forward to his eloquence. R.K. Johri, a very distinguished member of the Indian Police Service. He was a recipient of the Indian Police Medal for Meritorious Service and the President's Police Medal for Distinguished Service. He's associated with several voluntary and cultural organizations. He joined the steel frame of Indian bureaucracy in 1973. And finally, the mastermind of this debate, Shondik Chatterjee, who doesn't need any introduction to the members of Bengal Club, and he doesn't need any introduction in Calcutta. One of the best neurosurgeons in town, one of the best debaters in town, and he also is a member of the Bengal Club Committee, and he heads the library subcommittee. On the other side, Boria Majumdar, who I must say he couldn't escape being my student. So, poor chap. He has carved out a very unique place for himself in the world of history writing as well as in the world of journalism. He's, if I'm not mistaken, he's the only person in India who makes a career out of writing on sports with a special interest in cricket. He has authored many books, including 22 Yards of Freedom, A Social History of Indian Cricket, which came out in December 2004. He's co-authored Playing It My Way, and I don't want to go through the list of his publications. He was a Rhodes Scholar who went to Oxford, St. John's, I think, right? So, very distinguished member of the panel. I have a great pleasure in now inviting one of my very, very old friends, Paranjoy Guhathakurta. I can't even recall when we first met. It was such a long time ago. In sometime in our wild youth, I think, Paranjoy. So, he's a writer, speaker, anchor, interviewer, teacher, and commentator in 3 languages, English, Bangla, and Hindi. He's also known for his extraordinary courage in speaking, standing up for the freedom of the press. He has been in media, various forms of media for over 30 years. He has worked in Business India, Business World, Telegraph, India Today, Pioneer, and he now has his own outfit of publishing as well as doing interviews, etc. Another old friend, Siddharth Varadarajan, founding editor of The Wire, India's leading independent news website. He was earlier editor of The Hindu in Chennai. He is a recipient of the Shorenstein Journalism Award from Stanford University and the Ramnath Goenka Award. He's an economist by training, and he has a book, Gujarat, The Making of a Tragedy, which Penguin published in 2002, and is considered an essential documentary record of the book is considered an essential documentary record of what happened in Gujarat in 2002, which I have always described as a pogrom and not as a riot. And finally, somebody who I went to college with in presidency, Jawhar Sircar, who again doesn't need an introduction. Again, a very distinguished member of the steel frame, the Indian Administrative Service. He is now a member of the upper house. But as all of you know, his accomplishments are not just that of a bureaucrat or a member of parliament. Johri is also a very distinguished writer and a very, very sensitive historian. So in a way, we have been fellow travelers for a long time. So that's the panel, and few ground rules. One of them is obvious. Please have your mobile on silent mode. And this is for the speakers. Each of you have 10 minutes. And please stick to this 10 minutes very strictly. There will be a warning bell, a short bell at 8 minutes. You will know then you have 2 minutes more. If you go well beyond 10 minutes, I might actually advise the House here to expunge whatever you have said after 10 minutes. Of course, as you know, in the debate, people will propose and then oppose the motion. So I think, Shondik, we are sitting the wrong way around, isn't it? Actually, the proposers sit on the right of the speaker or the moderator. It doesn't matter, a small triviality. So the motion reads, oh, sorry, that's my mistake. Sorry, the motion reads that media by trial or trial by media is a curse of democracy, a very wide-ranging subject, the relevance of which was emphasized by the president of the club, and I'm sure that the relevance will be underlined as we go through this debate. May I now ask Snehanshu to please propose the motion.
Mr. Chairman, sir, my worthy opponents, fellow panelists, Mr. President and the distinguished members, and ladies and gentlemen. This debate of Bengal Club opens with a surprise. A working journalist for the last almost 4 decades, and being the incumbent president of the country's oldest press club, I stand here to propose a motion which says trial by media is a curse to democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, it may be a surprise to all the distinguished members, my worthy opponents, whom are very, very respected, and I consider them the best in the current time. And personally, I am the admirer of all of them, including Mr. Chairman, because all of them are related to media or have been related to media. So they know what it is, but I chose to speak because I stand here for my conviction, for what I have seen for 4 decades. Ladies and gentlemen, it may be an exhibition debate for all of you. You have come to shed your adrenalines, but I come on behalf of a profession. I excuse my worthy opponents that yes, I must speak my conscience. What is trial by media? The trial by media, if we understand, and if it is practiced in the rightest possible manner, then we would have not come to such a proposition. What is a trial? A trial, the dictionary says, and that happens in our constitution, a hierarchy is entrusted or they have jurisdictions to conduct a trial, their judiciary. None other than judiciary can conduct a trial in the truest sense of the term. Media is welcome for its investigative journalism. Yes, media is there to unearth the facts which somebody wants to hide. We know what is happening in our country. We all know the role of media, the very important role played during our freedom struggle, post-freedom during emergency, and at present which some of the worthy opponents are conducting. That is independent journalism, that is investigative journalism. They are unearthing the fact which somebody wants to hide. But I know none of them does trial by media, because of the fact it is said that it is a curse to the democracy. If it is not done properly, if investigative journalism is not a curse, media is not a curse, but the trial by media is an overstepping. Ladies and gentlemen, you all are distinguished personalities. Some are doctors, some are engineers, some are business personalities, some are think tanks, business professionals. Suppose I start saying something because I have this in my hand and I have the last mile to go live, that's my profession. And I reach millions. What happens afterwards, I'm not answerable. And I say, Mr. X, yes, it seems that he has done this, he has done that, he has done that, and that's why he seems to be guilty, he seems to be guilty, he seems to be guilty. The right of innocence before it is tried, the right of an under trial are not maintained by the media if the trial by media, as it is known and as it is practiced, only because of the fact that I have this microphone and I can reach out to the last mile, to millions, I say whatever I find. I won't have to substantiate with facts, figures, and documents. I stand, I say, I write. You all know what happens when a slandering comes and it goes to the media. It is an irreparable loss and injury, ladies and gentlemen, to your reputation which you have taken throughout your life to build. And I take only 1 second to tarnish that reputation, that irreparable loss and injury. Those who have faced will understand more that you will not be able to the same person. Your children will not be able to go to the school. Your wife has to resign from the organization where she is working, or the spouse will have to resign. Because it's very easy to say all these things. But who is there to substantiate? Where to complain? What to do? How to control? The electronic media has certain norms of NBA and all other things, National Broadcasting Associations. They have a regime. But how many of you can go? How many of you can approach the court? The court has several occasions said that no, they have never prejudiced the media to publish, but the only one thing we know that we all have the contempt of the court. The factual reporting, the balanced reporting, that is something which is done. And actually, the irreparable loss and injury which is done by the media, it is a curse in the democracy. You see, democracy is not ideal as it is practiced, because ideal democracy is not practiced that we all understand and we all believe. Similarly, the trial by media is a curse, but investigative journalism, responsible journalism, critiquing, which all my worthy opponents do, is not a curse. It's helping the society. Media is meant for that. When people do not have faith and do not get justice from any other pillars of democracy, they resort to the media. At least they come to the limelight. But that is investigative journalism, which has to be substantiated. But the trial by media is not substantiated. It is prejudicial. Ladies and gentlemen, in various occasions, Honorable Chief Justice of Mumbai High Court, Justice Dipankar Datta, Honorable Justice Kurian Joseph, I'm just giving the examples of the recent past, commenting on the Nirbhaya case. They have commenting on this famous case in Mumbai. They have on record said that the judges has confessed that we would have been hung unless and until we have punished him, though we know that enough evidence could not be proved. That is something. You think of a person who is a judicial officer sitting in the court for granting a bail, in which all the newspapers, when he's reading the newspaper along with his family members, all the newspaper has said he is the guilty, he is the guilty, he is the guilty, and the media forgets that he is innocent unless and until proved guilty, and proved guilty by a competent court of law who is empowered to say guilty. I am not empowered to say guilty. If I steal some money even, you can accuse me. Even if you see and others see the CCTV records, you have to go to a court to say that I am guilty. That is what we are saying, that several cases have been there. So the trial by media, which media is not allowed to do. Why should we refer to the other case? Not to Sushant Singh Rajput's case and all other cases, Nirbhaya case, ROC murder case and all these. Let's come to the Dhananjay case. If you see the film Dhananjay, your acclaimed editor is the director is the member of your club, and you can ask Mr. Arindam Sheel that what research he has done. And the research has been done by the professors of Indian Statistical Institute, when it was said that not certain basic things were conducted because it was a wave that the person was hanged on 15th of August. It was not proved properly, but the judgment had to come and he had to be hung. So that is something, ladies and gentlemen. Suppose you are going out of this debate. The next two cars are coming one after the other. You don't know the other person. You are saying hi and hello. And then the other person does any crime. And the reporters come and say that you are the person who was seen last and we must be conspirators and you know everything, his motive and all these, though you do not know. This is trial by media. The reputation is lost. You have a right to privacy, our constitution guarantees. You have a right to be free from media. So, ladies and gentlemen, investigative reporting is a must for democracy, but not trial by media. We must be responsible. I rest my case to my worthy opponents who have been responsible. Somebody has headed the public service broadcasting. Somebody is a crusader. Somebody is known for his editorials. So I think all of you understand, and everybody understands, trial by media is a curse, but not investigative journalism. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Snehasish, for this very sharply drawn distinction between investigative journalism and trial by media. Boria Majumdar to oppose the motion.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, members of the proposition and my own team members. You know, it's very difficult to debate against Shondik Da because Shondik Da fixes everything. Everything in this debate is fixed. He gets the president to come up and support the motion in the way he wants to. He himself drafts the motion. He calls me and says, "Tumi ei dike bolo." And then when I ask him, "What are you planning to do?" he says, "No, I am not speaking." And then 10 days later, I see he's the last speaker in that list so that he gets to speak last and I get to speak first. So, you know, ladies and gentlemen, it's an uphill task when you take on Shondik Da. And of course, the way Snehasish Da articulated the motion. Snehasish Da is good media, right? All of us know Snehasish Da is the president of the press club. He's good media, right? 4 decades of experience. Now, is Snehasish Da a curse? Is he a curse? He's not. Is Siddharth a curse? What did Snehasish just tell us? All of us are worthy members of the media who have done something good. So is everybody a curse here? Trial by media is a curse. These guys are also a curse. Who says so? Who says? We are a voice. We are not a curse. Snehasish Da himself acknowledges we are not a curse. Last year, Shondik Chatterjee happened to be part of one of my programs. And that program was aired at the time of the Bengal election, and the rhetoric of that Bengal election was the most vile and disgusting I have ever heard in my life. Everything was polarized, everything was communal. And when I interviewed Shondik Chatterjee, he says to me, quote, "When I operate on a man and I open up a brain, I don't see the color of that brain, whether it's a Muslim brain or a Hindu brain." Where is he saying that? He's saying that on a media platform. Who's amplifying it? A journalist is amplifying it. Who's seeing it? You guys, the audience and the public is consuming Shondik Chatterjee and then saying, oh, you know what? This man has a voice. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we stand for. We are not a curse. We are a voice. Let me give you a couple of examples from sport, the realm to which I belong. 2004, a man called Devendra Jhajharia, and I want to highlight Paralympics because not everybody follows it. Devendra Jhajharia went to the Paralympic Games, and as he was going, one man accompanied Devendra Jhajharia to the airport, and that was his father. And he said to Devendra, "Agar tu jeet ke aayega, to badlav aayega. Agar tu haar gaya, to kuch nahi hoga." He goes there and he tells me, "Boria da, you know, the Chinese come there with all their equipment and TheraBand and stuff like that. Mujhe to pata hi nahi hai ye TheraBand hai kya?" So then I said, yeah, obviously all of us now know TheraBand, right? It's for the shoulder. So what Devendra Jhajharia does, he takes an axe. He's the son of a farmer and then starts training. This is what he does with an axe, cuts a tree, gets his shoulder ready, goes and wins in Paralympic gold. Okay, that's Devendra Jhajharia. Now, Devendra Jhajharia wins a Paralympic gold in 2004, is promised 30 lakh rupees by the government and by the federation. For 6 years, ladies and gentlemen, Devendra Jhajharia is not paid that money. Finally, we, the so-called curse, highlight this problem in the media, in front of everybody, and Devendra Jhajharia gets multiple Padma awards, this time the Padma Bhushan, and he is given his money, leading to the 35 athletes going to Tokyo, winning 19 medals, ladies and gentlemen. We are not a curse, we are the voice of democracy that brings in a kind of revolution. Okay? Number 2, a certain Deepa Malik. Shondik Da loves Deepa Malik because absolute case for a neurosurgeon. Deepa Malik goes in for a surgery to the RNA hospital in Delhi in 1999. And as she goes in, her husband was fighting the Kargil war. And the last wish that Deepa was told, she was told, you have 2 options, you will die or you will live the life of a paralyzed. What do you want to do? She said, I have one last wish. Doctor said, what? She said, can I walk into the operation theater? Doctor was a little taken aback. What do you mean? She said, this is the last time I will walk. 183 stitches, 41 days in coma, 23.5-hour surgery. 15 years down the line, in Rio 2016, Deepa Malik wins a Paralympic medal. Story doesn't end there. 2012, when Deepa Malik qualified for Rio, the next morning, the federation decided that another athlete, by doing what we know happens in Indian sport, is actually the one who will go, and Deepa will be drawn to the courts and take the round of what they claimed, the judiciary. Deepa Malik, one single athlete, no institutional support, no federation support, no government support, has one resort. We the media, not the curse. We pointed it out in front of the courts. We raised the voice. Deepa Malik goes to Rio, throws 4.61 meters, gets India's first Paralympic medal, ladies and gentlemen. Today heads the Paralympic Committee of India. We are not a curse, ladies and gentlemen. We are not a curse. We are a voice. And it's better to understand there is the good and the bad. There's a good politician and a bad politician. There's a good club and a bad club. There's good food and bad food. To paint all of us in the same broad brushstroke is perhaps the work of the proposition for tonight, but they themselves stand for what we stand for. We are not a curse, because if we did, Snehasish sure would not be in his profession for 4 decades. He's not a hypocrite, because if he was, he would have left. Shondik Chatterjee would not appear on television debates and television programs because Shondik Chatterjee is not a hypocrite. Mr. Johri here, he's not a hypocrite either. So to blame the media for a night of good gossip is fine. But do you actually believe in what you are talking about? My final example with 3 minutes left. Very recently, there was a case of a Monica Batra. All of you have followed it in the newspapers. I covered Monica Batra in Tokyo, a 23-year-old who was banned by the Federation, the Table Tennis Federation of India, because she had charged the Federation of match fixing, which Shondik Da has done for tonight's debate. Now, Monica Batra on that particular occasion did not have anybody because she's banned by the Federation. She's a lone 23-year-old girl being tortured. Think of mental health, for example. Please do think. Monica Batra comes to the media. We highlight the case, ladies and gentlemen. We did. The crusade lasted for about 2.5 to 3 months. In the 2.5 to 3 months, Monica was stopped from representing India in multiple international competitions, was on the verge of a nervous breakdown because the institution of the Federation was tormenting her every single day. What transpired? The media crusaders, television, print, radio, and digital. Radio, all of us highlighted the Monica Batra case, exactly like Snehasish does. Highlight, not pronounce judgments. The judgment was left to the High Court. And what judgment did the High Court pronounce? That Monica Batra today is back in the fray, is back to world number 7, the highest ranking by an Indian individual paddler ever. Who highlighted the case, ladies and gentlemen? We, the media. So it is very easy to take out examples. I also am aware of the fact that there are prime time television debates where people want to know things which can be classified as bad media. We don't stand for that. Not everybody, ladies and gentlemen, is a sensationalist. Not everybody is frivolous. Not everybody goes down the same path. We are the same path as Snehasish Da is. We are the voice of dissent. We are the voice in a democracy which will raise the voice of the poor, of the underprivileged, of the Monica Batra, of the Deepa Malik, of the Devendra Jhajaria, and most importantly of you. Today you want to speak out against a politician, against an official, against a bureaucrat, and you do not have the official mechanism. Who's your voice? Ladies and gentlemen, it's we, the media. We are not a curse. We are absolutely not a curse. And I represent to you, to the chairman, to members of the proposition and to my own team, that we are an institution of this democracy which will highlight to you what you need to be, what you all deserve to stand for. India deserves better. You deserve better. Yes, you can say the media needs to improve, but the media inherently is never a curse, not a curse, never was. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boria. Not a curse, but a voice, not to be smeared with the same tar. There is good media, bad media. Important and significant point. To be countered by Sabyasachi Chaudhury.
Good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, sitting there, I was just wondering, can a dumb person utter a curse? A person who does not have a voice will neither be in a position to give a boon, nor be in a position to utter a curse. And it is precisely the reason that media has the voice. And I agree with my learned friend. It is precisely for the reason that the media has the voice. Its curse on democracy is all the more important. How that voice is being molded and modulated is what we are debating today. This is not a debate about good media and bad media. The motion doesn't say that media per se is a curse. It is qualified. We are talking of trial by media. And in the exuberance of the opening batsman of the opposition, perhaps there is a tacit admission that trial by media is bad media, though we don't advocate that. We are not part of that. There is this tacit admission in the entire speech, and that is why this attempt to digress and take the credit of Deepa Malik and this sportsman and that sportsman, all media. This is not the work of media. You are only reflecting what others have earned. That's good. But the debate is not about good media and bad media. So the question is, what do we understand by the expression, the media? And being the second speaker, I would just like to open up the motion a little bit. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing the war between Turkey and Ukraine. And it's being bombarded in our drawing rooms by the minute, in our mobile phones by the minute, by the present media. But I take you to a war which happened thousands of years ago, when a gentleman called Sanjaya, by virtue of his divine powers, was narrating the events of the battlefield to a blind king Dhritarashtra, paving the way for the spiritual epic, the Bhagavad Gita. Now, an important and significant feature of the Bhagavad Gita is that it has reference of the narrator Sanjay in only 2 or 3 chapters of the 18 chapters. And another significant importance is that the reference of Sanjay doesn't have his personal opinion on what is being heard or on what is being narrated. Now, from the times of Sanjaya, where an individual was the medium, we have the evolution of the modern day media. Initially in its form in the print, then electronic, then social, and in its diverse avatar present day with the tablets, the phablets in our phones and whatnot. And this is where it becomes more potent. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly visualize that all of us in some form are playing the dual role of Dhritarashtra and Sanjay. We are blind in the sense that none of us are in the actual scene of the event where the war is taking place or the crime or the event is taking place. We are collecting the information from a fellow Sanjay who is qualifying it with his or her own opinion or own view, because now we are accustomed to what is known as edited media. The editorial content or the colored content, if I may use the expression, is what we are being exposed to. And the color may be on either side. And that is what we are perceiving as blind Dhritarashtras. And then because of our individual Twitter handles and WhatsApp, we are ourselves emanator. And emanating it, either agreeing or disagreeing to the view. And this is in turn, the cycle is getting repeated. It is this power, both of the conventional media and the transformation that media has undergone in recent times, which makes the potency or the voice of the media all the more important. And that is why when this voice, this multiple effect that it results, when this is juxtaposed in the context of a trial, and we are talking of trial, not achievements of sportsmen. We are talking of trial in courts of matters with a sub judice, where an accused is defending or his life and personal liberty is at stake. We are talking of a trial. The motion is very specific. You are talking of trial by media. And it is in that context you are contemplating whether it's a curse or it's a boon or otherwise. So when you are talking in terms of a trial, the most significant issue is that are we pre-deciding the issue? Now, ladies and gentlemen, do you know that why Taj Mahal was regarded as one of the wonders of the world? It was precisely because of the 4 pillars which it has. The pillars are designed in such a way that if there is an earthquake, the pillars will fall on the outside and not on each other or on the main structure. Now, kindly juxtapose the Taj of our democracy with the 4 pillars as the motion was introduced of the judiciary, executive, legislature, and of course the media as the 4th estate. Now, if there is any imbalance, or one of the pillars is slightly taller than the other, or any of the pillars is slightly shorter than the rest, the entire balance, the entire wow factor, the Taj factor in the democracy is absolutely demolished. And I will not give you any instances, many instances, but I'll just refer to one case. And that is the 1959 case of Nanavati.
All of you must be aware of that. It was made into a popular movie recently. But I want to advert to it only from a legal point of view. Now, Nanavati was accused of murdering Prem Ahuja, who had an affair with his wife. Now, significantly, the media only highlighted the affair of the wife, how she was tortured and she was torn apart between a lover and a senior officer of her husband. And ultimately, in spite of all the evidence indicating that Nanavati had committed the murder, the jury found him not guilty. And the judge, before whom the trial was being conducted, was forced to term the verdict of the jury as perverse, and being helpless, referred it to the High Court. The High Court finds Nanavati guilty, sentences him to a life imprisonment, but within 4 hours of the verdict, the then governor puts a suspension of the sentence till such time the verdict of the High Court is confirmed by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court sets aside the order of the governor, terming it unconstitutional. You have no power of staying the sentence of a court. And then Nanavati is put back into prison, and barely he spends a few years, he is let out in parole on health issues. And with the new formation of the then state of Maharashtra, the then governor Vijay Lakshmi Pandit grants him pardon. The entire sequence happens from 1959 to 1967 or 68. The reason why I'm highlighting this case is that this is a classic example of trial by media, which has an impact on all the 4 pillars. The judiciary was affected first, and in a big way. Then you had the role of the media in influencing the jury one way or the other. You had the executive with the 2 dubious decisions of the governor, which is still controversial. And lastly, you had the legislature, which intervened and had to abolish the jury system altogether. This is where, ladies and gentlemen, the motion is very significant and relevant. So essentially, we on this side of the proposition, we are talking of 2 constitutional rights. A right to fair trial, recognized by Article 21, life and liberty, and a right to free speech, recognized by Article 19(1)(a), freedom of speech and expression. Now, what happens if there is a collision of the 2? Ladies and gentlemen, the jurists are unanimous that if there is a conflict between the right of a fair trial with that of a free speech, the former has to give way because of the wider amplitude of Article 21, and at the end of the day, you are talking of a life and liberty of a person. That is what is important. And this is where the role of the media, which has a voice, and I am conceding to it, because it has a voice which is so tremendous, it has to be exercised more cautiously, and there has to be checks and balances. Ladies and gentlemen, you are aware that when opinion polls and exit polls were initially introduced, you did not have any restriction as to when the results could be published. But then when it was found that it is influencing the pattern of actual voting, you have restrictions of opinion polls which cannot be held after the elections have been announced, and results of exit polls cannot be published until and unless the entire polling process has been completed. So that is where you have evolved a check and balances on personal opinions, on collective opinions, however right or wrong it may be. And as a lawyer, I am conscious that just as I cite Nanavati case, the opposition is going to talk of Arushi and the others. Since the bell has tolled, I conclude only by one line. When you vote today, kindly bear in mind that it's essentially a conflict between a right of fair trial and a right of fair speech. And when your liberty and life is at stake, a right of fair trial should get precedence over the letter. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chaudhury traversed from the Bhagavad Gita to what he calls the Taj factor in democracy to the Palkiwala case, and then drew a distinction between fair speech and fair trial. You can see from that sketchy outline the range that he covered. I'm sure Paranjoy Guhathakurta, who is the next speaker, will also be as rangy.
Thank you, Rudrangshu. Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Ambarish Dasgupta. Thank you, my colleagues. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin my presentation by pointing out a glaring factual error in what the speaker before me, the eminent lawyer, Mr. Sabyasachi, had to say. The fight is between Ukraine and Russia, not Turkey. It could have been a slip of his tongue. I'll use his analogy, that of the 4 pillars of the Taj Mahal, to point out that it is the media that is keeping democracy alive. And it is because the media points out what is wrong with the judiciary and the way it conducts trials, not just the political executive, that we can still call ourselves a democracy. And we like to call ourselves the world's largest democracy. Snehasish talked about privacy. It is the media that has pointed out why our legislature has been tardy in putting together a personal data protection bill. Why? How would you know that our data is not protected? My phone was Pegasus, but so what? I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here to give you examples of how, if it had not been for the media, justice would not have been done. And I wouldn't go back to 1959 as the speaker before me did in the Nanavati case. I'll give you examples which you have all known about. Names that are familiar, of people who are unfortunately innocent individuals who are no longer with us. Let's start with Jessica Lal. She was murdered. You may have seen a film about her. Nobody killed Jessica Lal. If it had not been for the media, Mr. Manu Sharma would not have been behind bars. Yes, he gets parole every now and then. He's under life imprisonment. April 1999. January 1996, Priyadarshini Mattu, young student, murdered and raped brutally. I will not name the perpetrator of the crimes, his father. Maybe the father couldn't do anything about it. Do we blame the son's actions all the time on the father? He belonged to the same fraternity as the speaker on the other side, Mr. R.K. Johri. He was a senior police officer. During the trial, he said he was not getting a fair trial because the media had already tried him. Thankfully, Santosh Kumar Singh, the son of a top cop, he was sentenced first to death and then to life imprisonment. How long did it take? 10 years. 10 years of so-called trial by media before he was put behind bars. Ladies and gentlemen, have you heard of Nitish Katara? He committed a terrible crime. He fell in love with a woman whose brother is now behind bars, sentenced to life imprisonment. You call it an honor killing, right? Call him what you like. His father had a criminal record. February 2002. Ladies and gentlemen, have you heard of Satyendra Dubey? He blew the whistle on a scandal that was going on in the construction of highways in Bihar. He used to work for the National Highways Authority of India. He was killed in November 2003. A letter he wrote to the then Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, was leaked. Have you heard of Manjunath, Shanmughan Manjunath? Young student from the Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow. Bright young man who used to work for the Indian Oil Corporation. He was murdered in November 2005 because he detected that a petrol pump or a number of petrol pumps was selling adulterated fuel. Where were these places? Lakhimpur Kheri. Would you have known about what happened to him if it hadn't been for the media? Today, Lakhimpur Kheri is in the news for the wrong reasons. How would you have known? You've heard of Ajay Mishra Teni? Minister of State for Home Affairs, his son who's just got bail, his vehicle, and the lawyer will be happy, allegedly ran over agitating farmers, a journalist who videographed that event, not to mention 2 supporters of the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party. Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a lot that's been talked about Arushi Talwar. Yes, there was a section of the media which sensationalized it, but it was the same media which later said that justice had not been done. Read a book that has been written on that. A book has been written by a journalist. Yes. So I am here, the Uma Khurana case, a teacher in Delhi. There was a false sting operation done on her to point out that she was allegedly enticing her students into commercial sex. It was never proved. But what I'm trying to tell you is that you, ladies and gentlemen, you would have been living in North Korea, where the headlines would only sing praises for the great supreme leader. You wouldn't have democracy in this country if it hadn't been for the media pointing out what is wrong with various wings of Indian society, including the judiciary. Are you aware how many people are behind bars in this country? It's close to 5 lakh. And do you know, 76%, more than 3/4 of them are under trials? Many poor, underprivileged people are behind bars. They have already served the maximum sentence that they would have been given. They don't get access to the law. The system is completely weighted against them. You know, it's a cliche to talk about, justice delayed is justice denied. It is a fact. Who will point this out to you if it's not the media? Madam, it's the media which is under trial. Have you heard of journalists who've been killed? Siddharth will tell you more about it. Journalists against whom there have been first information reports, people who've been harassed. False cases have been registered against him. One journalist is behind bars for more than a year. Why he went to report about a dastardly rape of a Dalit woman in Hathras? What was his crime? He's been accused of working for some terrorist organization in Kerala. I'm not here to support those journalists who spread hatred in society. Let me name some of them. My dear friend Arnab Goswami's channel spreads hatred. I'm not for them. I was a member of the Press Council of India, put out a report about the corruption in the media. The media reports about corruption within the media, just as the media has to report about corruption in the government, among politicians, among the judiciary. This topic is very old. There was actually a report of the Law Commission of India way back in August 2006, which is called Trial by Media, about free speech and fair trial. Yes, we need a fair trial. But who talks about what is going wrong with our legal process, our judicial process? Who talks about that, if not the media? Ladies and gentlemen, my time is almost up. I want to reiterate 2 points. There are journalists and journalists. There are journalists who are not watchdogs. Forget biting, they can't even bark. There are journalists who are lap dogs, especially if the lap belongs to an important person. There are journalists who are guide dogs. They can help a visually challenged person cross the road. They can sniff out drugs and explosive substances. So there are journalists and journalists. Don't tar everybody with the same brush. Today we unfortunately we are living through a time when a large section of the media is subservient to those who are in positions of power and authority. Those who are in power, and I don't need to name him, likes to be interviewed by people who ask him good questions. Like the famous actor from Canada who asked our Prime Minister, Maniniya Pradhan Mantri, "Aap aam kaise khate hain? Aap kaat ke khate hain ya choose ke khate hain?" That is not the media, ladies and gentlemen. It's a separate matter that a large section of the media is today subservient. Don't tarnish the media. It is because of the media that you live in a democracy, that you have freedom of expression, and therefore, don't kill the messenger. It is because of the media that you have a democracy, because they keep the other four pillars of that edifice still strong. Thank you very much.
The line of argument of the opposition is now becoming clear. There is a media that needs to be despised. There's another kind of media that needs to be applauded. That seems to be the line that is emerging, but I'm sure we'll have greater elaboration. To speak in support of the motion, R.K. Johri.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As usual, the press came first, then came the law, and now it is the turn of a cop to come, like a Hindi film, when the cop appears always at the end, when the team leader has already dispensed justice, given the punishment, and the law is there to get him an acquittal and fight his case so that the public claps and he becomes a hero. Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask one question. When the newspaper slips from your chink of the door, what do you read first? Surprisingly, a friend of mine, a senior colleague, one day I found him reading the entertainment and leisure pages first and then going to the main page. I asked him, why are you having the dessert before the main course? He says, I want to insulate myself from the shock that I am going to get after reading the headline of this newspaper today. Ladies and gentlemen, I would certainly give the credit to media, because as has been told by my opponents, that it is because of the media that the democracy is surviving. They have talked about the four pillars, and my friend Sabyasachi has already given an example of how the four pillars are balancing the edifice of this constitution, this great constitution and this democracy. And if one pillar starts corroding into the other pillars, then the edifice of democracy is seriously in danger. It is not only a curse, it spells doom for the country and for the people of this country. I will not trace it from the Mahabharata time as Mr. Sabyasachi Chaudhury has done, but when did this come? Trial by media, when did it start? It has started from the 80s, as I know, and it has been used to describe the impact of media coverage on an ongoing legal trial, thereby forming the public opinion, a public sense of right and wrong, and an offshoot to this is added by the part of electronic media. The day after the case is reported, since I'm a cop, I will be taking that angle and have been an administrator also, and from the executive side. The day after a report is published in the newspaper, the media comes out to say, the police have no clue. What does it do? Then whatever gossip the media gathers about the line of investigation by the official agencies, it gives such publicity in respect of the information that the person who has indeed committed the crime can move away to safer places. Media cannot take the credit alone for the dispensation of justice by the judiciary and the courts of law. But then what does it do to us? What does it do to the society? First of all, the investigating agencies are demoralized. The investigator is demoralized. They defame the entire force, the entire executive, the entire inquiry, and no second thought is given to taking a side voluntarily, pronouncing a verdict, and playing the role of judge, jury, prosecutor, and persecutor rolled into one. I'll give you a personal example. When I was in charge of a district sometime long back, there was a scuffle between two teachers in a college, very reputed college of a district. One of them happened to be a cabinet minister in the then government. And it was reported to me that he had slapped the principal who belonged to another group. Now, it was a very funny situation for me because the teacher who's supposed to have slapped the principal belonged to the ruling party and the other one was, of course, from the opposite party. Now, we have some couch potato journalists also who would not go to the spot, but they would call you at the mid of the night to find out what has happened. And here was one from a very reputed paper who called me up in the night to ask me whether such incident had happened. My version to him was that it has been alleged that so-and-so has slapped so-and-so. The next morning, the newspaper reported that I said that so-and-so has slapped so-and-so. Now the hell broke loose in the district. The ruling party stood up in arms against me, that how could you say that this is what has happened? In spite of my telling them that this is the allegation, this is the FIR, but somebody to sensationalize, they missed out on the allegation part that I had said. Media, the trial by media poses enormous threat to the judicial system. It robs the accused of fair trial, as everyone has said, and not only fair trial, it can sabotage the investigation. Actually, the culprit gets the chance to devise a way to get out of the situation, and cases perhaps go uninvestigated or not prosecuted. It also tends to influence the opinion of the judges. Nanavati case has been referred to in great details by my colleague. Sometime it does, if there is a jury. In any case, thank God the system of jury has since been abolished after the Nanavati case, because that was a landmark case. And if you all, some people would remember, there was a newspaper called Blitz being published by a gentleman called R.K. Karanjia. And the way he took up the case of Nanavati day in and day out, I was very young at that point of time, but I remember that it being there. Right to fair trial is an absolute right of every individual within it. India, under Article 14, Article 20, Article 21, and Article 22. I ask you, what is more important for us? Your dignity or right of freedom to speech? Every time when your dignity is at stake because of the reporting of the press, even if you are found not guilty, you find the society doesn't accept you. The point is that media has created a situation where it has exceeded the Lakshman Rekha. It now delves into the realms where even when somebody denies to appear for an interview, there are threats, no matter if he's a national level player. Ladies and gentlemen, terrorism is the scourge of the society. We have got several laws to deal with the matters of terrorism. And we have laws like POTA, like UAPA, like AFSP to deal with the terror created by the people. It is time that we have a law, specific law, to deal with the problems of terrorism, which I call media terror, tele-terror, because the kind of reporting that we have here shakes our confidence and shakes the edifice of the democracy, which is ultimately affecting the nationhood and the sovereignty of the nation. I am sure there will be a time, or the time may be ripe, when a legislation to deal with this freedom for expression and the media's role and the lines may be drawn, and there may be specific laws to deal with the problem as we have dealt with terrorism. And ladies and gentlemen, when such law is brought in the law court or brought in the parliament, in the temple of democracy, I am sure my friend Jawhar Sircar will support it. Thank you very much.
This evening seems to be one of coinages. So we had the Taj of democracy, now we have media terror, another term that is being introduced. Siddharth, Varadarajan, your turn to make coinages.
My panelists and distinguished members of the audience, I was apprehensive about taking part in this debate when Umadi first approached me on behalf of the club, because I wasn't sure what to say, what I would be arguing, and I'm not really that experienced in holding debates of this kind. But I really want to thank my worthy opponents for preparing the terrain on which I will happily launch a full-scale attack. Who are the people in this country who are unhappy with the media? It's those who are in power. It's those who want things to remain hidden. It's those people who don't do their job that they're meant to, don't do the job that they're elected to do, or who have sworn by the Constitution to do. My opponents speak of the Taj Mahal as an analogy. Ladies and gentlemen, we are today in a situation where that Taj Mahal is crumbling before our own eyes. And I'm not referring to the mythical nonsense which is part of the communal package that is so much, that dominates official thinking to such an extent. So the Taj Mahal and other so-called Muslim monuments are derided. I'm referring to the fact that the pillars which are meant to hold this Taj Mahal of our democracy, these pillars weakened over many years, and today, can any of us really be in any doubt that those pillars are crumbling? Where does the curse, what actually is the curse that democracy is confronting today? It's a parliament, with due apologies to Jawhar Sircar, that does not allow debate, that does not discuss laws adequately when drafting them, to such an extent that the Chief Justice of India was forced to make a statement that if only Parliament were to deliberate upon the laws that it passes, and he was referring to standing committees, select committees that normally and traditionally vet legislation, evaluated from all standpoints to make sure that these laws serve the purpose that they are intended to serve. He said it's the failure of Parliament to vet those laws that has landed India in a situation of endless litigation, where judges are called upon to vet and adjudicate on laws that are drafted so badly that they are open to all kinds of interpretations and distortions. So if we are talking of curses to democracy, I would say the failure of Parliament to do its job. I would say the failure of a Prime Minister to hold a single press conference in the 7 years that he's been in power. The failure of the Prime Minister to take unscripted questions from anybody, least of all the media. I would say a curse comes from Pegasus, the deployment of deadly spyware, and two of the victims are sitting on the stage, Paranjoy and me. And the reality of Pegasus came to light because of the exertions of the media, in which the wire also played a role. It's the existence of these sorts of things, it's the existence of electoral bonds that have allowed for non-transparent flows of money into the electoral process, allegedly in the name of transparency. It's a curse to democracy. My learned friend speaks of the need for a law to regulate journalism. I shudder to think what the impact of that will be. Already, without the absence of such a law, I don't know how widely these things are reported in Calcutta, but hardly a day passes when colleagues of ours in Jammu and Kashmir are not summoned to the local thana to render account for stories that the police and the administration do not like. That's a curse to democracy. The arrest of dozens of human rights defenders, and they're being charged for all kinds of crimes like sedition, terror, etc. That's a curse to democracy. The failure of the judiciary to adjudicate in a timely fashion on matters of life and liberty, on matters of federalism that affect the well-being of the Union of India, and I'm referring to the reading down of Article 370 and the abolition, unilateral abolition of Jammu and Kashmir statehood. So in more than 2 years, and the case has not even been heard properly in the highest court of the land. A man who calls for the genocide of Muslims can be arrested on a frivolous charge and then given bail within a matter of days, whereas a young Muslim man, a young, I would say, upstanding former student and activist, Umar Khalid, whose speech, and this is the passage that the police presents in court, whose speech calls for peace, peaceful protest. He can be in jail for nearly a year without bail, charged under heinous crimes like terror and sedition. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the pillars that are supposed to be holding our Taj Mahal of democracy aloft, the pillar of the executive that abuses and undermines democracy every chance it gets, the pillar of the legislature that is meant to scrutinize, evaluate, discuss, deliberate, provide oversight, the pillar of the judiciary that is meant to be that legendary check and balance to make sure that the executive and the legislature and all the individuals who have sworn to uphold the Constitution actually do so. The media was a fourth pillar, is a fourth pillar. We are just doing our job. And when we do our job, the people who are the actual curse to democracy are the ones who say, oh, this is a trial by media. I submit to you that the dichotomy between Article 19 and 21 that my learned friend presented to you is illusory. If we have judges and we don't have a jury system anymore, I can understand and I support the idea that opinion polls or exit polls when people are still polling can have a harmful impact, because we don't know what the impact of that is on lakhs and millions of voters who can be easily influenced. But we're talking about judges. If a judge is so easily swayed by media coverage that she or he is unable to deliver a fair judgment, then I submit to you that that person should not be a judge. If police officers, incidentally, what we call, or what is being called trial by the media, is actually trial by the police through media leaks. The supplying of information, tainted information, information that they cannot verify. Whenever you read a story in a newspaper that contains some kind of damaging allegation, and when the source of that story is not identified, when it just says a highly placed police source or a senior government official said this, this is the police, this is the executive that is attempting to subject people that it is targeting to trial because it knows the weakness of its case. We in the media do our job by shining a light on topics that those in authority do not want a light to be shined on. They would do everything in their power to extinguish that light. They abuse us. A minister has coined the lovely phrase prostitute to describe journalists. They place all kinds of restrictions. They've been arresting and charging journalists now for the job they do. And of course, the tarnishing, the label, the accusation that what we are doing is trial by media is simply another form of that attack on freedom of the press. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to support our side and reject the case made by the proponents of the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Siddharth. Real defense of the job that the media performs. The final speaker from the proposing side, Shondik Chatterjee, who has been described as many things, including being a debate fixer.
Mr. Chairman, sir, we excuse Boria for using the term fixation and fixers because we know he's intimately involved with the IPL and we quite understand his sentiments. Mr. Chairman, sir, ladies and gentlemen, we have nothing against the media from this side. If we did, we wouldn't have the Honorable President of the Press Club on our side. We have nothing against the press, whether it's Mr. Boria, Majumdar, or anybody else. We strongly believe that the media is one of the four pillars with the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary that support the platform on which resides the idol, or perhaps the ideal, or perhaps the idea of democracy. But it is our contention from this side of the floor that when the media, the pillar of the media, lowers its standards by thinking that it can pass judgment on everything and everybody, or when the pillar of media, like Mr. Siddharth Varadarajan just told you, can substitute the other pillars of the executive and the judiciary because it thinks it's far more important, then I'm afraid there is an unevenness of the platform on which democracy is perched, and democracy can come to a tantalizing slide down to Mother Earth. And that is what we fear from this side of the floor. There is one thing worse than an uninformed person with power, and that is an uninformed person with power who does not know when to stop using his power. And that is the summary of the motion that you see before you today. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why we think that trial by media is a curse of democracy is based on four letters: A, B, C, and D. A for avarice, B for bias, C for our Constitution, and D for destruction. And I will highlight these four letters to you. A for avarice. What is it that makes media indulge in these so-called trial where they think they can pronounce judgment ahead of the police or the judiciary? The reason is not TRP, the right principles. The reason is TRP, television rating points. And in a country where you have more television channels in a city than you have free health clinics, it is not any surprise that each one is vying with the other to have more TRPs. And the only way they can do it is to sensationalize, to try people, to pronounce judgment ahead of the judiciary, ahead of the police. And it is prompted by greed and avarice. The Right Honorable Mr. Paranjoy Guhathakurta talked about trials by media that have made a difference to the fabric of our democracy. I will remind him of some. In 2015, Jasleen Kaur posted a photograph of one called Sarvjit Singh, saying this man in Delhi had caused sexual harassment to her. Television channels jumped into the fray, called Sarvjit Singh a pervert. He was called the predator of Delhi. He was called the most dangerous animal roaming the streets of Delhi. He lost his job. He lost his wife. He could not send his children to school. In 2019, the courts cleared him of every single accusation, and he was considered to have been wrongfully accused. But the trial by media completely ended his family. And where was the media to report on what had happened to him? They maintained a stoic silence. The Shunandan Pushkar case, the Shunandan Pushkar death case, which was immediately christened by the media as the Shunandan Pushkar murder case. And we had all these stories of a Right Honorable Member of Parliament and one of Mr. Jawhar Sircar's colleagues, as if he was moving around the streets of Delhi with blood dripping from his fingertips, looking for like Lady Macbeth for the perfumes of Arabia to sweeten his hand, which was covered with blood smear from a lady. What happened? Same in the Jessica Lal case, same in the Indrani Mukherjee case, same in the Sushant Singh Rajput case, where the media seemed to have decided all the people that were responsible for his committing suicide. A for avarice, B for bias. Every single trial by the media is biased. And I'm reminded of the story where a postdoctorate student invites 100 people to an auditorium. 10 in the front seat are media people, 90 are common people. And he says, I'm going to tell you about the greatness of a chemical compound called dihydrogen monoxide. He says this is a compound that is essential to life. We must respect it. We must preserve it. We need it for the future of mankind. And a media person from the front row, most of them had qualifications. Their highest qualifications were school leaving exams at the end of class 10, challenges this postdoc student and says, no, this is a compound that causes severe burns when it is in gaseous form. Another media person stands up and says, this is a compound that corrodes and rusts metals. Another media person says it kills millions of Indians every year. Another media person says this compound is found in malignant tumors. It causes acid rain. Somebody else says it causes excessive irritation and bloating if consumed. And a last media person stands up, faces the public and says, this is a chemical that will kill you because when you're dependent on it, when you don't get it, you die. 80 out of those 90 common people voted that this is a compound that should be banned from Mamta's state, Modi's country, and Putin and Biden's planet. And do you know what this compound dihydrogen oxide was? It was water. So easy is it for the press to distort facts and completely change our minds in what they think is a way they can subvert public opinion. This is public opinion for you, sir. And of course, there is another bias. And that is political bias. You know, when media decided they needed to try people to increase their points, the three people they chose as victims were police officers, doctors, and politicians. because these were the most susceptible people of society. And they could get lots of brownie points by saying that every policeman that solved a crime did so because he took money and bribes. Every death that occurred in society was because of negligence of a doctor. And every politician, whatever he did, was based on political motives and not social justice. The politicians then did what was the best thing. They bought the media. So the media is either a BJP media or a Trinamool media or a leftist media. So much so that if I need to find out information in the morning, I have to read the Times of India and the Telegraph, and I know the truth is the perpendicular bisector between the two. The third C you have heard is the Constitution, and my colleagues have elaborated on Act 21, and I will not go into the details of that. The fourth D is destruction, and the main reason why I think we do not like trial by the media is its destructive potential. I'll tell you my own experience. After a lot of persuasion in our hospital, we persuaded a neurosurgeon who had a brain-dead patient to agree to try and persuade that family to go in for organ transplant. The professor and head of cardiac surgery from Medical College came down and said, please transfuse 4 units of blood. We need a heart in Bangalore. We're going to take that heart for transplant. There descended some people of the media. And they started broadcasting live from the hospital with the concerned doctors in front of them saying, look, patient is dead and this hospital is transfusing blood. These are bloodsuckers. These are horrible people. And this went on the air live. It affected the transplant program in this city and set it back by 10 years. Though the 2 young people that covered this event, just freshly out of school, would never know the damage they had done to a very important medical program in this city. Mr. Chairman, sir, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would say that from this side, we do not like trial by the media for these 4 reasons. It is based on avarice or greed, money or TRP. B, it is based on bias. The bias may be political bias. The bias may be bias, as I showed you, because you can easily affect public opinion in the way you paint something. C is it is against the Constitution. And D, it has a destructive potential like nobody else, because instantly you can tell 1 million people what they want to believe, but what is not necessarily true. And I conclude by saying again, we have nothing against the media. I understand, though, that when the other 3 pillars of the democracy are lowering its standards, the media is often forced to do the same to keep the platform level. Thank you very much.
So there you have it, the alphabets of the motion from Shondik Chatterjee. Jawhar Sircar, will you go to E, F, G, H?
Chairman, sir, members of the proposition, members opposing it, and friends. You see, for the last 1.5 hours, I've been watching with admiration the attempts made to completely mislead all of you. I'll say mislead because let us come to the topic. Let us come to the topic. We have described everything of the media, whereas the topic relates only to trial by media. You don't start describing film actresses from Suchitra Sen to Sunny Leone. We are here for a specific purpose. The trial by media. So let's get to the point. When media undertakes trial, that is only point. When media describes water, when media singes you, I mean, that's not the topic of discussion. The topic of discussion is when media undertakes trial or attempts to undertake trial, is that inimical to democracy? That's all. 2 points. Trial by media. We've gone into every sort of a case. You see, what's the point in discussing Nanavati now? Nanavati was a case that sauced up a very dull society with adultery, but nothing has stopped. I mean, Nanavati took his opponent or whatever, his wife's friend, Prem, took his name too seriously. So he was shot. Now, the fact that why are we dragging Nanavati in the sense that how much has it affected democracy? Did Indian democracy collapse after Nanavati when he was released or brought in? So why do you bring in every act to the media? So we need to distinguish. We are all mature and I admire their approach, but the point is we need to be precise. The precision lies in only concentrating on trial by media. For trial, you need a case, you need incidents, you need evidence, you need witnesses, you need a procedure, okay? So these are more or less the components of a trial. Media undertakes these trials at times. There's no point denying that media does not do it. But when it is tempered by a mission, would you like to have Jessica Lal's murderer go scot-free because he belongs to a privileged class? He brought out issues that required to be brought out. Otherwise, Jessica Lal would have paid the cops. I mean, Jessica Lal's murderers did influence the cops. Nirbhaya case almost has political ramifications because it relates to 50% of our people, 50% of our race, and they are discriminated against, and you had to go overboard to bring some sense back into the system. Rizwanur, a case of, without concentrating on the Rizwanur case, do you think the regime should have changed in Bengal? One of the contributors. So there are certain cases. Please try to understand that everything that flies is not a bird. Even cockroaches fly, okay? So we need to distinguish between a cockroach and a bird. What are we talking about? Media, when it undertakes on a trial mode. Media can be exaggerating, it can be disgusting, it can be lots of things. We're not here defending that part of the media. Let us look at one of the disgusting parts of the media, this Sushant Singh Rajput thing. This was a fixed matter, and this was almost political in nature, where they wanted to fix it in relation to the Bihar elections. That's all. That's all. So here was a disgusting case of an attempt to do it. And it was not a trial by media. It was a propaganda. It was a torture. It was something that was let loose. It was timed. It was orchestrated. You knew it, I knew it. So why do you call it a trial by media? That poor girl, whatever, Chakravarti with that buck tooth and all that, nice girl. I don't know what happened to her. But then the whole idea was that we have to score brownie points. Somebody referred to the Gita, and I've always wondered how the Gita could be recited with two armies on two sides, restless, with horses doing what they do all the time. But let's pass on. I was referred to the Nanavati case. Opinion polls, that was also referred. Opinion poll is a media function. It is not a trial by media. So let's get our fundamentals clear. And opinion polls do not impact, do not amount to trials. So why are we discussing it? Police get demoralized. Yes, I've been very much part of administration, and I do know that you do get demoralized. But what matters more is the people get demoralized when nothing happens. The people get demoralized when nothing happens. So somebody has to shake them out of the stupor, and somebody has to make it very clear that we will not let things be fixed. Trial by media, focus by media comes in of assistance when things are hunky-dory and things are being fixed. That's all. And it could extend from policemen to administrators to judges to everyone can be fixed. Everyone has a price. Having said that, somebody referred to a slap by. The judicial system is being demoralized. The judicial system is being wrecked if you go in for trial. First of all, even if you go in for a trial by media, even if you go in for charges, even if you go in for drama, you don't end up with conviction. Huh? As my good friend Siddharth says, if a judge is so easily influenced, what do you do when somebody, okay. If a judge is so influenced by the media, he need not be a judge. He could resign and play golf. He is the judge, he is a policeman, he has taken up an occupation and he has to undertake the hazards of that occupation. The judicial system, when you talk about the judicial system getting demoralized or judicial system being put into danger, do you know what it means today? We have 4.4 crore cases pending. I'm repeating, 4.4 cases pending, 4.4 crore cases pending in the courts. We have 70,000 cases pending in the Supreme Court, the last word on the subject. Every issue of major concern to India is before the Supreme Court, which is looking in different directions. Now, having served government, I do know that it is integral to the functioning of government. If you see the symbol of government, you must have noticed, no? The Ashok Stamba and all that, and think deep. What does it mean? It means everybody in government, the 4 pillars or whatever you call them, is a shere, is a lion, and everybody looks in a different direction, isn't it? Everybody is looking in a different direction. That is the essence of government, and that's why I think we chose that symbol. To bring them back into looking once at the common duty is the task of the media, and the media occasionally succeeds. Question comes of how much threat is it to democracy? Which of the cases narrated by the honorable members here, which one threatened democracy? Tell me. One case. One case. Which case threatened democracy? They were salacious, they made TRPs, they made good points, they disgusted people, but which one was, let us say, a threat to democracy? The threat to democracy, on the other hand, lies in the fact that it's a one-way traffic with the rest of the media. Not a single interview has been held by the Prime Minister of India in 8 years. And when his transponder fails, we know his real self. We know his real self at that point of time. It is incumbent on the media to take up this trial. The trial that I said is on missionary mode to clean up the nation, to serve democracy. Not a single case of media trial has been proved to be against democracy. So why are you bringing in prejudice in place of propositions? It's a sheer prejudice, it's a sheer postulate, it's a presumption. Why are you bringing this and trying to ram it through? The same point I would repeat again. It's an incumbent duty of the media to try on trial a person and a system that is wrecking the very fundamentals of this nation, the plural structure of this nation, the democratic structure of the nation. It is its incumbent duty, and then only can it be one step ahead, not a threat to democracy, but someone who stood up for democracy during India's darkest hour. It's incumbent on the media to go in for trials of those who deserve trial, and perhaps at the end of the trial, a conviction of the Nuremberg type. With these words, I thank all my friends here for having enlightened us, but I would bring you straight to the point. The topic is trial by media, not other activities, and how it endangers democracy. On that score, there is no evidence. So let us not waste our time with examples of personal hazards and personal losses. It is an institutional issue that we are speaking about. With these words, I oppose the motion. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Jawhar Sircar, for bringing the argument back to basics. Now we have a round of summing up from both sides of the Great Divide. Each of the persons who will be summing up have 4 minutes at their disposal. So Boria Majumdar is the first to go. 4 minutes from the word as you start, Mr. President.
Mr. Johri, please listen. Every member of this audience is a terrorist. Every member. Will you go and arrest them? I'm media. Will you arrest them? Mr. Johri is a decorated cop. Every member of this audience is a terrorist. I'm standing in front of a television channel, camera, and I'm saying, come on. Every member of this audience is a terrorist. Every member here is a terrorist. Will you arrest them, Mr. Johri? Take up the microphone and tell me, will you arrest them? You will come and arrest me. You will come and arrest me because you are a responsible person, a responsible cop. So trial by media, I've said this irresponsibly, and you decided to go by me and arrest everybody. You are the incompetent person here, not me. So Mr. Johri, don't give me this bullshit that everybody, the media terrorizes the cop, the media terrorizes the police. How dare I? Mr. Johri comes here, you know what? Today I heard media terror, I heard media dictatorship. There's one Mr. Johri who's a cop who comes here and says, you know what, entertainment page is dessert. Who is he to tell me what entertainment page is? That's my life. That is mainstream for me. Who says the cop will come and tell me what my life is, what I do in my private space, what I do in my sports space, what I do in my entertainment space? You have no right, Mr. Johri. It's a freedom of expression. The lady there might think the entertainment space is actually the mainstream. So we are not here to impose. Shondik Da, as usual, was brilliant. Shondik Da tells us 2015 Sarabjit, etc., etc. And Sabyasachi tells us we deflate. We, the media, deflate the judiciary in a manner that they fail in their work. We deflate the police in a manner that they fail in their work. 5 years later, Sarabjit was served justice, according to Shondik Da. 5 years later, justice was served. If the media deflated the judiciary, if the media deflated people like Mr. Johri, justice would not be served. Justice was served. So the point, ladies and gentlemen, and then Shondik Da comes and says, two guys standing in front of the television thing has pushed the medical profession back by 10 years. Come on. Two people, expose them, take their license away, put them, charge them for negligence of duty. Who will report that? We, the media, will. How did Shondik Chatterjee says, nobody from the media reported the Sarabjit acquittal. How did he know? Was he there? Were you there in Supreme Court, Mr. Chatterjee? I dare you weren't there. So how did you know? Because we, the media, reported the acquittal. Somehow we, the media, resulted in you knowing about that acquittal. And now comes the power. Each one of us in this city know that last year, when vaccines were being given, the elite got it first. The common man was struggling in hospitals, including Mr. Chatterjee's, Dr. Chatterjee's, struggling and wanting that one piece of the vaccine, when each elite in each Indian city, ladies and gentlemen, was getting it. The political class was getting it, the powerful were getting it, men in positions of eminence were getting it. And you know what? Unless the media said this has to be massified, everybody needs it. I cannot go to Dr. Chatterjee actually called me and said, Tumra highlight corona. Why don't you highlight that, the vaccine distribution has to be done like this because the political class is monopolizing it. They are doing it in a manner that the public health system will collapse. And we, the media, highlighted how it should be done because the political class was going wrong. Each time the political class enters your house, ladies and gentlemen, pulls you up, stops your freedom of speech, you will come to us because there will be a cop who will not react instantaneously. There will be a cop who will say, no, let me first. It is the media who will come to your rescue, make the voice, not decide. Because the decision is still with the Dr. Chatterjees of the world and Mr. Johri's. That's why none of you are a terrorist because the decision is his, not ours. I might just say nonsense and get away. I will not because he will then put me behind bars for being irresponsible. The media is the voice. The media is the messenger. The media is the fourth pillar that serves or tries to at least enable the service of justice. Do not kill the messenger.
No. Shondik Chatterjee, to sum up for the proposition, may I voice a concern, let this not descend to a match or a debate between Boria Majumdar and Shondik Chatterjee. That is not the issue. This is not some kind of a in-Bengal club feud.
Do you know how long it takes to become a brain surgeon? 5 years as a doctor, 2 years you train 7, 3 years you do general surgery 10, 1 year again you give exams, 3 years, 13, you become a brain surgeon, and then you spend the first 3 years in training. 16 years before you're a brain surgeon that somebody consults for his brain. Do you know how long it takes to destroy everything that you have done in those 16 years? 30 seconds. From a television camera totting individual belonging to the media that tries you, goes and exposes falsely, this man did a wrong surgery and killed this very important person. 30 seconds, all it takes to destroy everything you have learned in 16 years.
And the Right Honorable Mr. Jawhar Sircar will want to know, how does it affect democracy? It affects democracy, Mr. Sircar, because nobody wants to become brain surgeons in this country anymore. It's too much of a risk, too long a training that can be destroyed by a simple, uneducated member of the media who wants to try you. And therefore, Mr. Jawhar Sircar, 10 years later, you will not have enough brain surgeons. And your right to treatment of brain and spine problems will not exist in this country. Though I do appreciate being a politician, most politicians do not need to consult neurosurgeons because the two organs neurosurgeons treat are brain and spine. And you have to first possess the two to get to them. Ladies and gentlemen, we oppose trial by media because we feel that the media thinks it knows everything about everybody and expresses every opinion that suits it to malign everyone it dislikes at every opportunity. Is this not a curse? We think that the media arouses mass hysteria and instigates our animal instincts, both of which masquerade then as public opinion and weighs down on the police and judges even before an investigation is commenced. Is that not a curse? When the media uses its powers of spread of misinformation to destroy an individual, to protect a journalist's job or pay packet, is that not a curse? When the media screams shameful incorrectness, taking advantages of its audio-visual reach and power to pronounce an individual guilty, destroys his life and family, vilifies the villain and vindicates the victim, choosing by itself who will be the villain and who will be the victim. Is that not a curse for democracy? Ladies and gentlemen, when the media chooses to highlight titillating torments rather than praiseworthy pursuits, when it decides to tell you about terrible tragedies rather than philanthropic programs, when it tells you about toxic trivialities rather than purity of principles, is that not a curse for democracy? And finally, ladies and gentlemen, when the media paints before you fragments of misinformation, they have a term for it, they call it breaking news, fragments of misinformation. Is that not a curse? Imagine, members of the Bengal Club, before you go to vote, a camera-trotting media person who comes to the doorsteps of the Bengal Club, and these camera-trotting individuals are more dangerous to the fabric of democracy than the tanks streaming into Kyiv as we speak today. Imagine this man focuses on the emblem of the club, the cobra, and says, can you imagine a snake, a terrible, dangerous snake? This is the symbol of this club. How can anybody enter this club? The public will accept it and buy it. That's the problem, and that is why we would like to propose the motion and want you to vote on this side.
So we've had I think, a fair display of eloquence regarding freedom of fair speech and freedom of fair trial. Now it's for you to decide which way your votes fall on this motion. The motion reads, it's right there before you, but for reasons of protocol, the motion reads, trial by media is a curse of our democracy. So interestingly, all examples were taken from the Indian scene, so our was emphasized here. So may I now ask those of you who are in favor of the motion to please raise your hands. Okay. So I hope nobody's raising two hands. Okay. Those of you who are against the motion, I think the motion is carried. Thank you. You've been a very engaged and patient audience, listeners, and thank you all the speakers. As I said, it's been a rare display of eloquence and erudition. Thank you so much. Have a very good evening. Just 1 minute, please. There's a vote of thanks and I think giveaway of mementos from behalf of the club.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you all. It's a great honor and privilege to deliver the vote of thanks for this wonderful, power-packed evening. On behalf of the President, members of the General Committee, members of the Library Committee, I convey our sincere thanks to all the honorable and distinguished persons on the dais. The eminent presence of each one of them had indeed made this event a memorable one. We have panel discussions every year, which is a part of the library event, but it is for the first time we had this debate, and I am sure the library will take this as a milestone and include in the annual calendar of library events every year. We are really thankful and grateful to all the speakers, the moderator, and the timekeeper for carving out time out of your busy schedule and for being here to make this evening a wonderful one. We also thank our excellent and distinguished moderator, Mr. Rudrangshu Mukherjee, for moderating this event and making it more contesting. We also thank the timekeeper, Nandini Kaitan, for keeping time and making it conclude within the time schedules. Our heartfelt thanks to all our members and their guests for being here this evening and experiencing this wonderful contest of words. I thank the CEO, Mr. Dinyar, the management and staff of Bengal Club for making the wonderful arrangements for tonight. Those who have booked for dinner after this event will enjoy the delectable cuisine curated by our General Committee member, Afroz Randaran, and by his team, the entire F&B team, headed by Mr. Suneet Mandal. I also thank Gurudas for providing the IT support. I would now request two lady members in our General Committee, Dr. Nandini Ray and Afroz Randaran, to kindly come up on the stage and give the small mementos to each one of them. Please. Start with. Snehasish is there. This way. Okay. মানে আমাদের আর নিচে তো নিচে হ্যাঁ এমনি Nandini, you too. Thank you, Nandini. Thank you, Afroz. We have all come to the end of the program, and thank you and good night to you all. I would just request all the speakers on the dais to just come up a bit forward for a photo shoot. Is the President here?